Well, good evening and welcome to episode 5 of Fracking Nightmare. Well, it's been a pretty hectic day for me. I was intending to head back south from Barton yesterday evening, and then we caught wind of a possible sighting of the rig, the iGas rig, on the motorway. So not wanting to miss the first action, I headed back to Barton to spend another night under canvas. It was a pretty chilly night too, I can tell you. Anyway, as luck would have it, I then got a call from Russia Today and headed up to Blackburn to do a brief interview with RT at about noon, and the transcript of that you can find on my Facebook page. So then heading back down the motorway, got back down to Devon at about 5 o'clock, just in time to get a quick shower, get changed, and get down to the studio here in Plymouth. So thanks very much for joining us. Now, as those of you who've been following Fracking Nightmare for the last few weeks, as you'll know, this is the show that makes absolutely no pretense of sitting on any fence. And you definitely wouldn't want to be sitting on this fence. If we look at the screen here, this is the newly electrified razor wire surrounding the iGas Barton site. What on earth can they be expecting? Well, you know what? There's an airfield right next door to Barton. So what are they going to do? Are they going to put netting all the way across the top of the rig site, lest something inadvertently falls out of one of those low-flying aircraft? It's going to be very, very interesting in the next few weeks as creativity kicks in big time. Anyway, more of Barton a little bit later. So, what's been going on this week? Well, you remember that last week we talked about the breaking news. Let's get that up on the screen here. The breaking news at Chichester with the anti-fracking protest camp pitched on the lawns of the West Sussex County Council offices at Chichester. And what beautiful manicured lawns they were too. Well, on Monday morning, the leader of the council, Louise Goldsmith, came out and spoke to the campers there. And they had a roundtable meeting in the afternoon at which she listened sympathetically. Actually, I don't think she really gave a damn. Anyway, the following day, no less, she initiated the eviction order that had been granted in the High Court. And Louise Goldsmith instructed the bailiffs. Here we go. This is the bailiffs. There we go. That's the bailiffs at BALCOMBE, evicting the remnants of the vigil camp, the camp that was keeping Quadrilla honest. Well, unfortunately, that eviction order continues and right through until next spring. So in theory, it is now not permissible to actually camp on the verge of BALCOMBE. But I have a feeling that the anti-fracking community has way more creativity in stock than West Sussex County Council. So we'll see what transpires when that unfolds. So Louise Goldsmith, let's have a look. We've got a picture here of Louise Goldsmith because I would hate to think that you passed her in the street and didn't recognise her. There she is, Louise Goldsmith. Take a good look. Because should you meet Louise Goldsmith, you might want to have a word with her because it's very, very clear that Louise Goldsmith is effectively carrying out the instructions from Westminster. The leader of West Sussex County Council, this charade of democracy that the elected representatives are there to represent the people. No, they are there as an interface between the corporations and the proletariat to achieve their social license. So, no more camping at BALCOMBE, but hey, there's other camps that people can move to, more of which later. So what else has gone on during the week? Well, on Friday, let's have a look at what happened on Friday. We get the technology working here in a second. There we go. On Friday, Gazer Frackman, there he is on the right of the screen. Gazer Frackman, one of the most committed campaigners ever since his house was damaged in the seismic events caused by Quadrilla back in 2011. And Gazer, after his epic walk to London, is now working to bring the groups together. And every Friday, he is presenting a letter from the various anti-fracking groups and communities around the country to David Cameron. Of course, none of the groups ever get to see David Cameron. You get as far as the front door, and then a gentleman in a white shirt opens the door, takes the envelope, and says, "Thank you very much." And no doubt, as soon as he gets behind the door, it's straight in the wastepaper basket. Such is the charade of our democracy. But the reality is that this is, nonetheless, still taking the opportunity to get the word out to a wider audience, because the BBC and the ITV are invariably hanging around Downing Street to see what goes on. So, Gazer, well done, my friend. I know you're planning to take this campaign well into the new year, and any group that wants to participate, then make an effort to contact Gazer Frackman. You'll find all the details on his Facebook page. So what else has transpired? Well, we had the first trial today, in fact, of the protectors arrested during the BALCOMBE campaign. Now, I was hoping to have the journalist, the only journalist in court today, to give us a report, but unfortunately she wasn't able to join us at this particular time. And so I'm just going to read her brief report here. It's headlined, "The first BALCOMBE anti-fracking trial collapses." The first trial arising from protests outside Quadrilla's oil exploration site at BALCOMBE collapsed within an hour when the judge questioned whether an offence had been committed. District Judge Peter Crabtree invited the prosecution to drop the case at Brighton Magistrates Court this morning after hearing evidence from one police officer and viewing a 4-minute video. Now, of course, we'd like to think that the evidence that was offered by the police officer was actually supported by the video, and I will pass absolutely no comment because I didn't hear the evidence or see the video. The prosecution alleged that the protester had willfully obstructed the highway on July the 27th during a demonstration against Quadrilla's operation at BALCOMBE, but the defendant denied the offence. PC Simon Marchant told the court that the protester, should have used the term protector there, had walked in front of a lorry delivering equipment to Quadrilla and was arrested when she sat down in the site entrance. But after the court saw a video of her arrest, Judge Crabtree questioned whether guidelines set by the Crown Prosecution Service of prosecuting protests had been followed. These state that a prosecution was more likely to be required when protests were violent and there was significant disruption to the public and businesses. Prosecutions were less likely to be in the public interest when a protest was essentially peaceful and the suspect had a minor role and the act was committed in the heat of the moment, or was minor. District Judge Crabtree said it had been an extremely short period of time before the defendant was arrested in the site entrance, and he questioned how much disturbance she had caused. "I rather wonder," he said, "technically, whether there was an offence. I invite the Crown to consider whether they wish to pursue the prosecution, given the nature of the guidelines and the nature of the case." Let me translate that for you. You've got no chance, so walk away while you're still ahead. After an adjournment, Jonathan Edwards, prosecuting, said it would not be in the public interest to continue the trial. And the defending solicitor asked for costs from central funds to be awarded to the protester. Well, I think that pretty much sets the scene, doesn't it? So in other words, the Crown Prosecution Service should literally be stamping all of the papers for the cases still to come as NFA, no further action. But this is very, very significant, particularly with what is unfolding at Barton Moss, as we are going to see in a little while. Because today was day one of the Barton Moss Blockade. And the motto of the Barton Moss blockade is going to be bigger than BALCOMBE. All eyes over the next few weeks, well, probably about 2 months or so, are certainly going to be on Barton Moss. So let's just remind ourselves where Barton Moss is, because it's in a very different part of the country from BALCOMBE. So here we see on the screen, it's to the northwest of Manchester, between the towns of Earlham and Eccles. And for a little closer shot there, Barton well site, there you see it, right alongside the M62, and you see Barton Aerodrome. And all through the weekend, there were auto gliders. I tell you, I had to be pretty cold in one of those things at the weekend. Temperature was certainly below freezing in the early hours. But auto gliders and small planes, and the flight path is right across the top of that well site. Very interesting indeed. And a lot of activity there, that's for sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to bring in Helen Chunso. You may remember we spoke to Helen last week. Helen has been absolutely central in coordinating the activities and bringing the camp together. And Helen is a mother of 4 young children, and she is very concerned about what this abomination is going to do to our environment. And Helen joined me last Thursday when we went along to an iGas public meeting. And we had a very interesting experience at that meeting. More of which in a few minutes. So let's take that short break.
"60% of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming, and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed. What? Well, if she's not there, you just have to bring...
60% of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming, and everything that was in the water was burnt.
MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is part of the future, and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers, and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
And welcome back to part 2 of Fracking Nightmare. Now we're going to move to where the action is going to be for the next few weeks. Probably about, I've been guessing, somewhere in the region of 8 to 12 weeks. So certainly through Christmas and the New Year. So let's just take a look at how the camp is expanding. If we look at the picture there, that's actually just one half of the verge. What we have here in the foreground is a field of winter wheat, and the protectors are being very respectful of that field and doing everything they possibly can to avoid any damage there. The verge along the side of Barton Moss Road is being cleared. There's room for probably about another 50, 60 tents already. So if you're looking for that winter vacation destination, I can absolutely recommend Barton Moss, Manchester. The postcode is M37RQ, and I can guarantee that you'll be given a very warm reception. You'll be given help with putting your tent up there, and all food is provided for by the courtesy of the local community. I have to say that the local community have been incredibly supportive. Now, one word of advice is that remember, this is not BALCOMBE, it's not the summer, and the weather is a little cooler than we were experiencing at BALCOMBE, and the wind does whip across the moss there. So, in fact, if there is anybody watching who lives in the vicinity of Barton Moss, and you happen to have access to some hay or straw bales, then delivery of hay or straw bales would be very much appreciated, because one of the plans is to build a windbreak in front of those tents to hopefully keep them in position when the winds start whipping across the moss. Now, when I woke up on Friday morning, it was pretty cool, about -4 or so, frosts on the tents, but it seems that the red arrows passed over, because as you can see, we had quite an interesting aerial display, but I'm not going to make any more comment on that. So anyway, meanwhile, I want to bring Helen Chunso back online. So Helen, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Ian.
Good evening, Helen. It seems it was only a few hours ago since I last saw you.
That's right.
Hey, Helen, last week when I got up to Barton Moss on Thursday, of course, we had a very important appointment to keep because iGas were holding a public meeting just across the road from the protection camp at Boys Nope Golf Club. And you and I, although I don't think received a specific invitation, we decided to trip across there and see what was going on. So you want to give us your account of that meeting, Helen?
Well, I've never been to Boys Nope Golf Park before, but I was surprised to be greeted by the number of security that were there. It seemed that the event was heavily manned. I was also most surprised to find that there was a sign up there requesting no recording and no images to be taken. So I didn't particularly find it to be very friendly, although upon entering the room there seemed to be a number of smiling iGas staff circulating around with biscuits and tea while they spread a large amount of PR around the locals who appeared to be wanting to know the truth and were lapping it up for quite a while, what was being said there. But as you and I know, it didn't end up such a happy story for iGas by the end of it, did it, Ian?
Well, first of all, you signed in as H. Chunso, and I took the liberty of signing in as your husband, as I signed in as C. Chunso, and yet they seem to know our names.
That was quite remarkable. One can only assume that that some of the protectors at the camp, who I had noticed had posted that we would be going down there later, might have made that post on Facebook. In the event that any of the iGas staff had a Facebook account, they may have noted that, because I was greeted within 5 minutes of being there as Helen, which was which was, I thought, either exceptional telepathy or just routine surveillance. I'm not sure which one it was.
Well, and I assumed that you, because I followed you in a couple of minutes after you actually went into the room, I assumed that you must have told them my name because, of course, they immediately referred to me as Ian.
Well, I think you have a more familiar face than mine, Ian.
Really?
In all fairness.
So yes, we did listen to them attentively for a few minutes, but then it became quite apparent that they were in some kind of alternate reality.
Yeah, it seemed that some of the residents had concerns that they were gradually becoming aware of as the Earlham community wakes up about this abomination being unleashed on the community. They're slowly coming around to realising that there were very serious technical issues involved in the construction of a well. There are issues that need to be closely separated between exploratory drilling and later fracking operations. And some of them, it was clear, had started to look into those and were asking questions about those that were somewhat being half answered by the iGas PR staff there. And indeed, when we walked in, one of them was stating that well integrity was something that was of no concern or no worry at all to the community, which is something that I could not bear to hear.
Well, now we are actually going to make a few quotes, and I have to confess that I suffered an equipment failure when we went into that meeting, because I mean there was a sign on the door, obviously, that said no recording or photography, but my recorder appears not to have switched off as we went in the room. So although I haven't had the time since coming back from the north of England today, haven't had the time to extract the relevant parts, I will do so in a future show. So any quotes that we now put on iGas personnel will be supported in future weeks by the recording. And you may recall, Helen, that the well construction engineer, whose name was, well, I kept calling him iGas Chris because he wouldn't give me his family name, but I think we now know it's Chris Bone. Is that right?
That's correct. He undertook an interview. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, with the BBC, where he was at the iGas well pad with his full name. So yes, we're referring to.
But wasn't it interesting that they wouldn't reveal their full names?
Oh, well, I found it very, very entertaining that they would not reveal their names, yet they knew ours and wanted my address on signing in. And none of them were prepared to reveal were they locals or not, as iGas employs local members of the community to work on their operations.
And this is an organisation that keeps talking about transparency.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure we're going to learn that there's one rule for operators and one rule for the public as the time goes by. Anyway,
you know, one of the things that I have to say, and I made this observation in the interview that I did with Russia Today. You know, I actually hope that they were lying. I really hope they were lying to us, because if they weren't lying, if they genuinely believe some of the things that they were telling us, then what we're dealing with is gross incompetence.
I think we're actually dealing with something far more worrying than that. If I, as a human being, was about to undertake an enormous scale operation that is known worldwide to have an impact upon the wildlife, upon the natural environment of the water, the soil, and the air, and the human beings that live nearby it, and the health that they affect as a result of that. If I did not know that had worldwide had impacts on all of those biospheres of activity, I would actually consider myself beyond gross incompetence. I would consider that I was suffering from a type of sociopathic illness that enabled me to perpetrate solely for money my activities without thinking of other human beings. I'm not an expert in psychiatric medicine, but I would be very concerned about actually having any of those people working near such technical equipment.
Well, I think, you know, when we actually look at the environment that they are creating. I mean, I showed this shot at the start of the show. I mean, this electrified razor wire around the top of the iGas site. I mean, what kind of mentality is it that feels it necessary to put these kind of defences up? I mean, the evidence from BALCOMBE was very, very clear. Yes, there was some direct action, but it was fundamentally peaceful protest. And what these guys are doing here, I mean, it looks like they're creating some kind of FEMA camp.
I just feel it's extremely sad. I actually looked down that part of the earth the other day and burst into tears. I could not believe the disgusting waste of the earth's resources that has been used to so-called protect what is soon to be one of the most poisonous parts of our city. It visually is offensive. It is sends a very cutting message and a very aggressive message to deep into the souls of the people who walk on the moss. It is designed to send quite clearly the message that we have more strength and resources in this fight. Yet one thing that they do not seem to understand is that we have no fight in that way. We have no fight of aggression. We have only the wish to protect, and the way we protect is not the way they protect. And they protect with sharp cutting razor wire. We protect with peace. I think that this is becoming quite clear that we are different types of human beings.
Well, we are human beings, yes, absolutely. And what we're up against is maybe something that doesn't deserve that description. It's very clear there is a different mentality. Do you remember? I think it was iGas Chris. No, it was iGas Dave, wasn't it? It was iGas Dave. And when I asked the question, I said, have you guys actually looked at the impact that this industry has had in places like the US, in Canada, and Australia? Do you remember what he said?
He said that it wasn't actually their duty to do that.
That's exactly right. He said, what he actually said was, it is not our responsibility to take a look and investigate what has occurred elsewhere. Well, this is, obviously it's very clear that, these guys are literally operating almost on a sort of wing and a prayer. There's not a lot of science. I mean, here we are at the front end of a brand new industry, well, brand new to this country. This is the issue. It's not brand new, of course, because we've got 20 years of experience elsewhere to look at. But you would think that these guys would absolutely know chapter, line and verse. I mean, these guys should be better researched on this issue than we are. But it's very clear that they have not done any research. There was another part of the conversation where I actually asked Chris Bone how many wells had been drilled in the UK into unconventional geology outside of the Fylde Peninsula. And I have never seen a guy literally blag so blatantly for about 3 or 4 minutes before he finally acknowledged that he didn't know.
It is alarming that the job of that whole operation that evening, it was transparent to the whole community. There were a number of people in the community who had come in, and I'm sure we're going to see the video from one of them, who came in with an open mind to actually see what was happening. Or was going to happen in the community, and somehow something happened when they spoke to the people and they saw the presence of the truth of the questions that were being asked by people such as yourself and me, and there were other people there that were asking questions that would not go away and that they could not answer in a satisfactory manner. And there was, I'm sad to say it, there was a lot of anger because the people that have come from the community to actually find out about this, it is their home, and somebody is coming into it, and they are telling them what is happening to it in a way that is cold and clinical and not truthful. And the people of Earlham are not about to take that.
Well, exactly. And you mentioned the video. In fact, it was a lady called Karen And in fact, when you arrived at the meeting, you went and sat in the small group that she was part of. And over the next 20, 30 minutes or so, her jaw just dropped. Well, after she'd pretty much had enough and she was getting ready to leave, I asked her if she would be prepared to just give a quick summary of what had occurred during the course of the evening. So let's have a look at what she said. So Karen, we're here at Barton Moss. It's an iGas public meeting, and you live locally?
I do, yes, yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the residential meeting on Tuesday, but I came here today with a pretty open mind because I know very, very little about fracking. So I came to get more of an idea what it was all about, really, and what the effects to the environment are.
And now you've been in the meeting there for about an hour and a half or so. What's your impression?
Well, initially, before yourself came in, and I found that they were just telling me what I wanted to hear, and I understand that we have to find new resources, and they were perfectly willing to talk me into that and explain that there's no implication whatsoever to the environment and how perfectly safe it was. Until now, I've heard lots of other accounts which have happened in America and Australia. And there are carcinogenic consequences that I didn't know about, and I clearly asked him before anybody came in, was there any carcinogenic implications, and they said no, none whatsoever. But obviously after hearing yourself and another couple of people talking there clearly is. So my opinion is they were only telling us what I wanted to hear, and that was my opinion.
When I joined in the discussion there, it was very clear that they hadn't or weren't even prepared to acknowledge that there had been any problems with this industry anywhere else in the world. Is that what you understood?
Yeah, that's exactly what I understood, yeah. I asked the questions and they said no, it's a straightforward procedure. There's no implications to the environment. It's all been thoroughly checked out, and so I was happy that the explanation was given was the correct one, until obviously people with a lot more knowledge came along to the discussion, like yourself and another couple of lady that came in. So just giving their information gave me a lot better insight of what actually fracking is, which I came in with a complete open mind.
So what will you do now? What will your next steps be?
My next steps will be probably I'll go home on the internet and probably do some more of my own research. And I definitely will be attending more of the meetings now. Whereas I didn't attend the meeting on Tuesday, the residential one. I was thinking, well, it's going to happen anyway. But then, out of curiosity, I thought I will go to the iGas exhibition to see what their accounts are of it, to give me a better insight of what it's all about. And so it's been well worth coming.
And the key element here is that it's great to hear you say that you will go away and do your own research, because this is the big difference between the companies like iGas and then what we do, which is they want you to take everything they say at face value. We want you to look at it for yourself.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I realise, I mean, by the end of the meeting, now I've just come out, I realise that to them it's just a business, and to me it's my future of my children and their children's children. So I will research it and look into it more. I won't just sit back now and let it happen. I will look into it more.
Excellent. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. Well, that was Karen, and suffice to say that she was not impressed. Now, also at that meeting, I took the opportunity to give away some copies of the Truth Behind the Dash for Gas DVD, the trailer of which you've seen promoted during the ad breaks over the last few weeks. And in the coming days, the people at the protection camp are going to be walking along the road, trying to meet with the local community, talking with them, and also offering them the opportunity to take one of these DVDs and watch it, because unfortunately, of course, there is going to be some disruption to the normal lives of the local community in the coming weeks. But what you saw in the video there was the shock and the absolute disbelief at the magnitude of the deceit and the obfuscation that iGas representatives were perpetrating on the local community last week. And after I left the meeting and was talking to the people coming out, they were absolutely stunned. Now, subsequently, Helen, you went back into the room and you asked the iGas managers there if they would be open to a live debate with me. Was that right?
Yes, and I indeed have the email address of the company, so we can ask them. They also said that it was an idea that they had previously thought of, and that they would maybe consider having an academic in the debate. I trust that means that their fracademic could be met by one of our fracademics around the table, somebody such as Tony and Graphia, for instance, so we could have a good academic discussion.
Exactly, or Professor David Smythe, the geophysicist, who has put some outstanding information together, and of course he's the guy who established that Quadrilla were using outdated geological information to determine the location and the siting of their well at BALCOMBE. Let's hope that iGas are a little more on the ball, though somehow I doubt that. Now, Helen, let's move back to the camp, because we had a very interesting weekend at the camp. We had a number of people arriving on Friday and Saturday, and you had very kindly organised a welcome party.
That's right. I think that now that the camp is well, I have to say I could not organise such a thing. One would never try to organise that many free-thinking people. One can only say that that there is an event and welcome people to it. And I think that is the key thing actually about this camp. People need to understand that there is nobody making anybody camp out here. And it's actually not that cold, but out in the cold, everybody is there, so open-hearted, so warm, so welcoming, so full of ideas, so joyous. This is not some trial that anybody is being forced into. This is a joyous occasion. This is about the human spirit refusing to accept abuse of a community, abuse of our environment, abuse of our intelligence, and abuse of our rights to have clean water, clean air. There were many people that were actually feeling delighted about this, and I think it's a time for celebration. I was absolutely astounded at how many beautiful people came down and bought gifts on that day. It was quite a day.
It was incredible. And on the Saturday, I mean, it was wall-to-wall local people, everyone coming down from, I mean, not just the immediate community, but people coming from, you know, quite some distance to show their support and solidarity with the camp.
That's right. That's right. It was very, very special to see, and interestingly, lots of different parts of Manchester, people coming down from different parts. They know I can pop down, you know, quite easily. It's really drawing people in, as it's touching people, as everybody is aware. They kept telling us that we don't want this to happen in our area. Everybody is aware that Barton Moss is currently in the firing line, as it was, and is mindful of the fact that they're on the way to them.
Well, let's just remind ourselves that, I mean, I'm just going to pull up on the screen here. There we go. On the screen, because Barton Moss is literally right over on the almost the top right-hand part of the purple blodge on the screen there. All of that purple on the screen, right from the Wirral, right across to Western Manchester. That's all iGas. And so, as I've said right from the start of the year, iGas are potentially a much greater concern than Quadrilla. So it's why Barton Moss is so critical in the scheme of things here. So yeah, people are obviously realising that if this kicks off, then within the next decade or so, we could be looking at 6 to 8 pads per square mile right across the whole tranche of the northwest there. Helen, we're just going to take a very short break, and please stay on the line and we'll be right back with you.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, The New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
And welcome back to the third and final part of Fracking Nightmare. I have Helen Chunso on the line from the Barton Moss area. Now, Helen, I believe that Salford City Council has some problems with the planning regulation approval. Is that correct?
I think that what happened in 2010 when Salford City Council granted the planning application is that they granted planning application for coal bed methane exploration, and they were unaware that iGas were going to drill through the coal bed methane into the shale. We have pointed out that this is a breach of the planning permission, and that is something that Salford City Council, in their ability or lack of, are currently wrestling with. A conversation with David Best at Urban Vision today informed me that he is submitting his report this week to Salford City Council on the matter, and should it be found to be a breach of the planning permission, that would obviously incur a reapplication. It would be an extremely difficult thing. I do not know what people they are consulting with, although I am informed that they're consulting with people. They're not consulting with me, and I don't think they're consulting with Frackoff. I imagine that they're consulting with iGas as to what this means. And I think that what will happen is that Salford City Council will this week pass their decision on whether this is a breach of their planning or not. Unfortunately, Salford are doing nothing to arrest the progress of the works on the site.
No, indeed. And actually, we heard Chris Bone, the Well Construction Manager, again try and give his explanation as to why they were drilling into the shale. They have to do it as part of their seismic survey. Well, sorry, Chris. We know the real reason that you're drilling in there is because the shale is the mother lode. We know it, you know it, and it's just a question of a little bit more transparency, Chris. Isn't that right? Well, anyway, Helen, I want to go back to events of the weekend because we had a couple of special visitors there, and here we see them on the screen here. This is Lardale and Guinevere, who led the Druid circles that held the ceremonies at the gate at BALCOMBE. And coincidentally, it seemed that whenever they held their ceremony at the gate of BALCOMBE, something transpired that caused Quadrilla some headaches. And we had the circle on Saturday. Would you like to explain what that circle was all about, Helen?
I think that there has come the time when the people of the area have walked up that lane, they have looked at what is happening on that site, they have felt a sadness, and they are not quite sure what to do with that. And people are looking for a togetherness in this, which they have found. We made our first blessing of the community working together at that site in front of the gate, and people were very moved to find the spirit that is within them, and the wish, because there is a sorrow that's involved in this. Some people may feel different things. Some people may feel angry. Some people may feel confused. But there were definitely strong feelings about this that can be worked out through the community. And anybody who was at BALCOMBE can attest to the fact that coming together in a circle, in a community, is the powerful way that we actually move forward here. We are looking at a hierarchy through the way that processes operate in society that are removing the equality of power from people, where we are asking for permissions from governments and councils, and then we are having to ask them why they have done that, and then having to ask them not to do it, and then watching them ignore those wishes. That is a hierarchy. That is a linear strategy that it is not to be applauded in the way that humanity operates with each other.
Well, that's how they get their social license.
Well, we are creating the energy with which we wish to work on the camp. We may be camping in a line, but in our hearts and around the fire, we have an equality.
Absolutely. And one of the remarkable things, because I was just standing outside that circle on Saturday, and the moment that the little ceremony had finished, although there was no breeze whatsoever, there was a tree that was slightly overhanging the circle, and it just spontaneously started to shed some leaves, and it was like it was throwing them into the centre of the circle. I don't profess to be able to explain that, but I can't deny what I witnessed. Well,
I think there will be many moments of beauty as the people of Barton Moss work together.
It's going to be truly remarkable. Now, the events of Barton Moss did actually kick off today. I was actually, I stayed over one more night at Barton Moss because there was the suggestion that the rig might actually be on its way and arrive today. But it wasn't the rig, but there was another truck that arrived today, and the basic ground rules were set, and I think that it took something like about an hour for that truck to find its way up the road. Now, Helen, obviously more and more people are going to be coming into the camp this week, and I can say from experience that they should bring as much warm equipment, I mean a 3-season sleeping bag at the very least, and maybe even 2 sleeping bags and a liner, because first thing in the morning it can be very, very cold. I mean, it's been down to about -4, and of course if the wind gets up, then there's a chill factor on top of that. But it's wonderful to see that people from all over the country are donating things like quilts and thermal socks. This is truly remarkable because the camp has its own postcode now. But Helen, what are the major items that the camp actually needs right now?
Wood, always wood.
Wood, yeah. Especially this time of year.
Yeah, there is a link on Facebook to Barton Community Protection Camp wish list. That is up there, which we will be updating regularly. But they need wood and things to put underneath. The ground is damp in a nylon tent, so anything that protects the body heat from being lost to the ground. We're looking at the moment to create a beautiful space for the children to play in. And maybe a swing, things like that make the area, the area is becoming more beautiful now. It is up and running in a functional way. So anything that people would like to donate that makes a place very beautiful, the wish list is up there. Please take a look.
Okay, and wood, of course, absolutely critical because at this time of year, the fires need to be kept going constantly. So preferably seasoned wood. And as I said earlier, straw or hay bales for building windbreaks, and also providing insulation for communal areas. So I know that anybody who arrives at the camp is going to be given a warm welcome. If you need any help to clear land, to put a tent up or to put your tent up, then that help will be offered. It is a wonderful atmosphere. And I think that the motto has to be Barton Moss, bigger than BALCOMBE. It may not be, the right time of year, perhaps, but as you said, Helen, a warm heart goes a long way to creating a beautiful environment.
Oh, the feeling up there today in the sunshine was fantastic. There was nothing cold there. But the one thing that I would say to people is, do not underestimate the power of wearing 2 pairs of socks.
Oh, absolutely. and I mean, last night I was in a 3-season sleeping bag, in another sleeping bag, in another sleeping bag. And I was as warm as toast. I must confess, I've also rediscovered the benefit of hot water bottles. I don't think I've used one of them in about 45, maybe even 50 years. But it came in very, very useful at Barton over the weekend. So,
the last I heard that there was going to be the creation of a communal sleeping space which would have a wood burner in it. So watch this space. We'll all be keeping each other warm up at Barton Moss.
Excellent. Well, Helen, I'm hoping to get back there at the weekend, but it looks like the fun and games have kicked off today, you know, with about an hour for the truck to get to the gate. This is the start of the fun. And as we said earlier, the fact that the trials have started in Sussex and the first case has been thrown out bodes very well, because this is going to be a peaceful protest, just as BALCOMBE was a peaceful protest. And so, yes, there is going to be a lot of frustration, but there isn't necessarily going to be cause for arrest. And I think that I have to say, Helen, in talking to the police over the weekend, and I absolutely understand, and as do the police, by the way, that there are some people at the protection camp who would prefer not to talk to the police, and the police obviously will respect that. But I think it also needs to be acknowledged that the police are not the enemy. It's very unfortunate that they have to effectively act as the hired thugs for the corporation. But I think that the police at Manchester have made an effort to learn from the BALCOMBE experience, and so we'll see how long the cordial atmosphere between the protectors and the police can be maintained. My hope is that it can be maintained for the duration, and that there will be mutual respect as the protection campaign goes through the next 2 or 3 months.
I sincerely hope so too, and I think it would be wonderful if Barton Moss Protection Camp set the precedent for demonstrating that it is not a requirement that the police operation is funded out of the public purse, seeing as there is no particular need for the police to be there to prevent civil unrest or any illegal activity on behalf of the protectors. Such a large-scale operation, I think, should therefore be examined in public as being billed direct to the operators.
To iGas, absolutely. And I think it also needs to be acknowledged that unfortunately any disruption to the local community is also directly due to iGas and the local authorities not taking account of the impact that the industry would have on the area.
I personally feel very sad when I think of the effect on the locals of what will happen in the event of drilling or any subsequent operations when things start coming up and down that road. In particular, the nearby horses, the nearby animals that are living there. There's a couple of local businesses where there's where there are animals. It is very sad to think that those animals will not be able to cover up the effects of their suffering, and they won't be able to get on the phone and write to any of the councils about their upset. And those animals are going to suffer. This is going to actually come home to the people of Earlham, what this is about, and it's my wish that that the people of Earlham unite in their suffering and create something better as a result of it. This is our chance to actually say we do not want this, and it's going to become apparent that we do not want this.
Absolutely. So, all eyes on Barton Moss. I mean, the eyes of the world are on Barton Moss, and what happens over the next few weeks is going to be absolutely pivotal in terms of how this industry unfolds. And in fact, if we actually look at the screen right now, what we see here is the iGas stock price. And as we can see at the end of May, beginning of June, when Andrew Austin, the Chief Executive Officer, went out effectively getting investors to pump money in to the company on the basis that it was going to start its exploratory drilling into the Bowland Shale, and promising the enormous rewards that were likely to come from that. Well, I can see that the stock price is drifting down a little bit. It's still quite high compared to where it was in April. But hopefully we'll be monitoring this over the next few weeks. And hopefully investors are going to realise that the likelihood of making money from this industry is slim to none. The only people who are making money are the likes of Andrew Austin and the management team, who are sitting on large chunks of stock, and I'm sure will be selling a few as the price gets hiked. Unfortunately, it's always the small investors who suffer. Helen, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again on the show over the coming weeks. And Barton Moss, bigger than BALCOMBE, eh?
And may the activities of the protectors and of the people of the earth and the wishes of the people of the earth continue to grow. Indeed. Helen, I will see you within the next few days in the not so desolate northwest. Thanks, Ian. Take care, Helen. Bye now. Bye. Now, the media is still trying to obviously promote the benefits of the shale gas. And here we have an article from The Sun focusing on Williston, North Dakota. And here the Mail picking up the same story. Now, here the headline, the new US gold rush that proves the anti-fracking fanatics have got it all wrong. Well, I did mention this on a previous show, but I want to mention it again because this is a classic in terms of misinformation. North Dakota is 40% bigger than England, but the population of North Dakota is 60% of the population of Devon. It's a wilderness. You can drive for hours across North Dakota and not see any sign of life, let alone human life. Williston, which sits right up in the northwestern corner on the Buchan Shale play, is a frontier town. And people are certainly flocking from all over the US and indeed from Canada to make a fast buck out of the shale gas boom there. There is nowhere in the UK that is comparable. The other factor, of course, is that it is the British government and the royalty and the church who stand to make large sums of money due to the mineral rights. And in fact, I see that even the likes of, I think it's Lord Sainsbury, has been serving notice on his tenants to let them know that he owns the mineral rights beneath their houses, as has Prince Charles in Cornwall. So somebody's obviously sniffing a fast buck here. But let's not forget who is driving this. It is none other than Lord John Browne, former chairman and chief executive officer of BP, now special advisor to David Cameron and the British government's cabinet, with special advisor being for business ethos. Yet this man, sitting on the British government, is also the chairman of Quadrilla. He stands to make out like an absolute bandit. This is the man who says, profit above all else. And we need to do whatever it takes to get Britain at the heart of the shale gas revolution. Now, on Wednesday of this week, he's actually giving a presentation. I mentioned this last week. They say imitation is the highest form of flattery. And he's titled his talk, Fractured Future, A Fractured Future, Climate Change in an Age of Fossil Fuel Abundance. I can only assume that he's titled the talk Fractured Future in a bid to get another talk of the same name pushed down the Google rankings. Well, let's see what happens. I have a ticket for this event, but given the choice between listening to this socio-psychopath and joining the amazing protection community at Barton Moss, I think I'm going to be heading up the M6. Thank you so much for joining us. Please come down to Barton Moss. If you're not able to camp, then come down on a day trip, come join the atmosphere and participate in the pivotal, I'll rephrase that, and participate in the pivotal blockade at Barton Moss. Thanks for joining us and see you next week.